Hi, I'm Mike Archer. I'm the product manager at Sunel, and this is a second level of the NVMS, and we're just going to talk about how to set up a recording on the local hard drive. So first of all, I have the camera added. Obviously the previous video explained how to add a camera. This is a online camera in our office, so it's actually working over the internet. And obviously at the moment, this being a Sunday, the lights are all turned off, so the image is not the best. Anyway, so the point being, of course, is just to show how to do the recordings. So first of all, you got to be sure that there's two ways of recording on the IP cameras, and you have to think the device itself is a recording system where a camera or a IP device is able to do recordings, be it local memory card or to an FTP or to a NAS. So in the case of the NVMS, the recording is obviously based locally, and this is one of the things that most people they're looking at the configuration of the camera, when in fact it's the actual NVMS software which its own part needs to have the recording set up. So here we go. We need to go to, first of all, the system manager, and you start with the concentrate record. So if I look at the record manager and obviously try and do something, you can see it says storage parameters not configured, recording service can't be started. And of course, logically, this is because there is nothing, it doesn't know where to put the recordings. So the first thing we need to do is go to the store config and select a hard drive or a NAS location to store the data. So here you can see if we had a NAS box attached, you can set the IP, the path, and the account credential logins. So rather than being a local stored hard drive, it can be on a network attached storage device. One thing to note here is we'll select hard disk, and I'll just browse my computer, and I have a folder here called recording. Pretty basic. So one RC drive, we're going to record. If in a production system, in a live environment, if it's scalable, you would typically have the recordings to dedicated hard drives for storage space. You know, perhaps your D drive or your E drive, or even RAID drives or mirror drives. It depends on your requirements and how many cameras you're going to attach. Dictates, you know, how you actually and where you're going to store the data. One thing to note here is that we've got this group ID number, which is 1 to 8. Now the reason for this is if you have obviously many cameras and you're trying to record 16, 32 cameras to the same stored hard drive location, that puts quite a burden on a single hard drive, because potentially the data rate would exceed the hard drive write speeds. So with all scalable systems, you should load balance the hardware architecture on the case of the system you're using. The machine here is just a laptop, so it just actually only has a C drive for everything. But the ID is an arbitrary number that you assign, which you'll see later when we come to this. So here, obviously, I'll enable the path. It's on the hard drive on RC, and we'll set it to use all space. You can limit how much recorded space is used by unchecking that tick box, and then you can just enter a number here. But for this purpose, we'll just leave it as all space, and then we just add, and then we can see we have our single entry, status OK, all space, just a bit of information. So you can see, so now we have a store config, so it basically now knows where to actually save the recordings. Okay, and so we'll save that so we know it's set up correctly on the software. So the next thing is the record manager. So this point here is, typically you could try and start the recording service or stop it. Of course, at the moment there is nothing set. So what we need to do is add a device. We obviously only have our single camera added, and then we can just tick. You can see on the expanded tree, it's just got the one device attached, so it's just a single camera. I previously explained about the tree architectural layouts, whereby potentially this, if for example this was a 4-channel video server, then obviously it could have associated camera 1, 2, 3, 4 or device 1, 2, 3, 4 associated with that single IP. Okay, so we add the device and that's okay. Now what we need to do is to be sure how we're recording is we need to go to the config. For the demonstration purpose, I'll just let the standard be as set is obviously all the time, and motion's not enabled. I will go into motion detection on another training video, purely because I can't actually give a good indication of motion because the camera currently is unavailable to me. I'm obviously running this from my home, so I can't actually wave something in front of the camera to show motion, so it makes it a little bit hard. By default, audio is not enabled on the recordings. Audio recording isn't used a great deal in particular countries. There's obviously legality of audio recordings, but by default we don't enable the audio. So obviously if you do want to enable, then obviously you need to do the tick box. And also what you can have, there's a circle install. So basically what this means is that if you'd set a limit on the recorded space, 100 megs, 200, 1 gigabyte, etc., then what will happen is automatically the recorded data will then start overwriting once the actual storage becomes full. So it just starts from the earliest recording. And also you can stipulate an amount of days. So for, again, certain countries there's particular legal requirements of maybe like a domestic CCTV system that can only legally record for maybe 7 days. Again, that does vary, and that's something people perhaps should be aware about, of the actual legitimacy of recording CCTV. And you can see here the amount of days is, you can stipulate that within the actual software itself. And there we have the stream. Now, so of course this camera has 3 streams, and in my instance, of course, this is an internet camera, so it's going to be taxing itself to send this stream 1 data, because this is a 2 meg camera. I'll leave it set to stream 2, which you can see here when I select, you got all the information relating to the camera, the frame rate, what's been set on the camera, and the quality levels. All that information is, you know, the NVMS software will just look at that stream, what's been set and configured, and that's the basis of what gets sent and saved. So we'll just save that. So we set it to stream 2, and everything should be on its way. Just close that down. Okay, so now we've got our camera added as a device, and now we can press the start service. Now this is a service installed on the actual on the PC as an application, and you can see here it starts to take a little bit of time before actually operates. Okay, so you can see eventually what happens is the little ID turns green, and the observant people amongst you will notice. Also, you see here the recording status is being activated. So if we quickly go and look at our hard drive, we have our folder here, recording, and you can see now it generates me some folders. This is the normal recorded information, and you can see here that you have this arbitrary number and then the name. In this case it's the DNS name of the camera. Now you may be wondering about this little unique number. This number is actually part of the camera configuration. If I go to the web browser of the camera, you can see that this number is generated at the factory. It's nothing that people need to change. We just increment these numbers on each camera, but it's possible that you may well want to change it. There's really no need. It's just an arbitrary number that we use as a prefix, so our software knows what, the different cameras. We address that camera. You can see here we have this device ID number, and you can see how that matches to this number here. So some people have actually asked what this device ID means. It's purely that our software needs this, and I stipulate here the device is unique. Don't change it. But there is potential that if someone had their own custom application that needed certain numbers, or maybe you had some third-party tools that just needed folders in a certain directory or certain names, then potentially it can be changed. But it's just to show you that what this number is generated by this device ID as part of the folder that's created for the camera. The actual contents, you can see here that this is today's date as I'm recording this, and all the recordings is done in a tree structure based on the date, and it will contain a special index file and the actual recorded data. Now you'll notice when it starts recording, it actually generates quite a large file, 128 megs in size. This isn't, of course, what's currently the size. It is purely that, like most systems, if you're recording CCTV, it's very wise to generate a file equal to the maximum size that would be required. This is to stop potential future disk full errors. So we try and create the file that we know how large it will be, to stop, obviously, at some point later in a time given an error, and if no one's looking at the system, or it just stops future problems. Many DVR systems of analog days would do similar things, but they would create the database in advance, so the recorded space is set to start with, just to stop those potential errors. So obviously this is, we do the same thing, that we create that file of this size. Obviously the longer the recording it goes on, then there will be more and more of these files. You can see my system that this is a VLC file. The reason is obviously I have the VLC player installed, and this file type is associated because the recorded data is indeed a .ts file. The .ts is transport stream, which is comes from an MPEG-2 container, which obviously is H.264. And then on the case of this camera, it is H.264 high profile, of course. So there you can see it. it's very simple that the recordings are just stored in instance on the hard drive as normal data files. So indeed, if you're using third-party backup utilities or tools or schedules, that you can point to the recording folder, and that you could use those tools to back up your data, obviously depending on your requirements. Okay, so we got some recording going. We can see the recording is still live. Is it the right camera? Yeah. So one thing, obviously, if you've inadvertently clicked the show information, then you wouldn't know it's recording. But of course, if again observant people can notice, we have also the recording icon on the actual device list as well. So playback, I guess playback is very important on CCTV. So if we have a little bit of playback of what we've recorded, it's been going for a little bit of time. So here we have the playback layout, device list. So first thing to do, obviously we need to select the device that we want to search. You can see here it's got the local path. The local path being, of course, on the NVMS software. Now, on the next video, I will talk about recording and playback from the actual camera. Just to let you know, obviously, the remote playback is where that would be what would be selected. So this would actually search the local SD card recording on the camera. So in our case, we have the local playback. So if I set the time for the search, set it to 9, obviously we should encompass. We do our search, and then we can see. In fact, it's picked up some previous recordings I had made just as a pre-runner to this video, just to make sure everything would work. And we can see, if I can just click on there, and then we can see 7:45 is a little bit of recording. Oh, so yeah, obviously I just click play. So that's when I first started doing recording. And yes, that is 7:46 on a Sunday when I made this recording. Okay, so we have some recordings here. If I left click and drag, hold down the control, left click and drag, right click and back up, I can go to a drive location, and I can do, I'll go a backup folder, add. Okay, yes, it's trying to back up to my CD drive, which obviously is going to fail. Okay, so there we go, there's the quick selection. Obviously you can see the playback. I can actually hide so you can get like a full screen layout. The playback can be up to the amount of devices, which can be 16. Now bear in mind, when you try and play back 16 cameras of H.264, the lower end PCs would perhaps struggle a little bit, because H.264 does indeed need a reasonable CPU. Something like an i7 would be able to play back 16 cameras quite reasonable. Keeping in mind, of course, the software is still recording in the background, so you've got to be very careful about the CPU when you're playing back. You maximize your CPU, then the recording and the playback on the same hard drive you're then coming into an area whereby you could potentially start losing recorded frames because the sustained data transfer is not capable of dealing with that. So there we go. It's quite simple. Our backup has failed. The reason for that is actually because it's trying to write to my D drive, which unfortunately is a CD-ROM, which is not going to do, and I've not plugged in a second drive backup. But you can see where the backup is allows you to make a backup of particular incidents or recordings. And on the CD with your camera, if it's not on the CD, then do go to the website and you're able to download the SN player, we call it, and that's a standalone playback utility. So you will be able to give that out, obviously, as evidence for particular incidences as you require. Okay, so that was the basic setup for the recording, and a little bit about the playback. If you do have suggestions of particular elements that you'd like to see covered in these videos, then by all means drop us an email. If it helps one person, then I'm sure what we have here will help many. So, you know, we like to make the products, although as user-friendly as you can. Video demonstrations are, I think, much simpler and much easier for people to just get a better understanding of how the software operates and runs. Okay, thank you very much for your time.